So welcome to the Smart QA Musings, which is a gentle flurry of interesting thoughts. And today's musing is about sustained excellence, the subtle mechanics of sustained excellence. And I chose the word mechanics very deliberately because it's not about a motivational exploration here. It's a little more structural, so we'll probably examine certain interesting conditions that are required for good thinking, what causes erosion and what we might want to do, and how do we probably look at the act of sustaining the excellence. With that, let's start with the first thought of saying, has anything changed today? Has the ground shifted? Seems to be there is a lot of change that occurs. We all know in our industry, in our technology, the people, the process, there is a lot of change, but probably something more groundbreaking has occurred, and we all know what it is, right? And the groundswell change is about, we've been always asking this question, can we be faster? But interestingly now, there is something more deeper. The bigger shift is the productivity revolution from AI, where it seems to be that the production is near frictionless, where codes being generated, documents get drafted, tests are written. Seemingly the output side of work has dramatically accelerated. Apparently, bottleneck has been removed. And so suddenly there is a fair amount of hyperbole on the entire notion of speed, productivity, and so on. But can we think well enough about what we are producing? So is it just the fact that the production is faster? Or are we also being able to think well enough? And that's really the newer ground shift. We are producing output that are probably abundant, which today anyone seems to be able to generate. So it's no more the volume, right? It is the quality of the judgment that we make, which is sustained over time. And that's very, very different. So the interesting paradox about the whole thing that we're discussing, and if you watch, is that the more and more the AI handles the act of execution. When I say execution, the execution of anything, the execution of an idea, the execution of generation of code, the execution of summarizing content, stuff like that. The more the AI handles the execution, the more we need to become contextual, right? And more judgment heavy, less ambiguous. And these seem to erode under the constant intensity that we have, right? Because we are more focused on delivery outputs, and there is an enormous amount of intensity. So as much as we're intense in producing stuff, maybe taking recourse to some of the intelligent systems, the subtler systems, which are not mechanical, they seem to be going away. Are they? Are we still as curious? Do we look at more different perspectives? Are we able to sit with more ambiguity? Or are they disappearing? Because we have in some sense given it away to our intelligent partner. And that's a question, that's a paradox. So the paradox is when something becomes much more simpler, I guess, very crudely put, we might become dumber. We might ease out, right? And therefore, the questions sometimes I hear in different places, different stuff, as questions, not necessarily emphatic statements. Why are our decisions getting worse despite the fact we have got better tool sets, more intelligent? We are shipping more, but are we missing some stuff still? Why does the adoption of AI, for example, feel productive on surface, but possibly shallow underneath? These are some questions that I'm sure you may have heard, you may have seen people ask in various situations. These don't seem very connected. They seem to be treated as separate problems, a data problem, maybe a process problem, or an adoption problem, but truly they all point to the same place. And therefore the conditions for deep thinking, in some sense, have quietly eroded, right? And no matter, no tool, however intelligent, can compensate for our loss of thinking, right? And that's the point to note, right? Shipping faster, missing more, AI is productive, but it's shallow. And why? That's the corporate side of things and the business side of questions that people ask maybe. But now let's introspect a little bit and see if we feel that in a familiar sense. Me as an individual. And what do I feel? I'm still feeling that I'm still delivering. I'm still working hard. I'm still delivering. I'm still responding. I'm still focusing on loops. So forget the industry for a moment. Forget the macro trends. I'm just thinking for myself. I'm still in meetings. I'm still closing tickets. I'm still shipping. By every visible measure, I'm performing. But somewhere in the quality of my thinking, it seems to be shifting. I can feel it. I can't name it. It's not that I become less competent. It's just that the way I engage probably is narrow. I don't know what to say of it. That's from a personal side of how I would view the whole problem. And in the entire act, like in one of our earlier musings, we are super busy. And therefore the common rhetoric is, I don't have time to pause. So how can I think? I don't have time to reflect. I don't have time to step back because we're busy. Recovery feels in some sense indulgent. Reflection seems to be a tactic of delay. Learning, as much as it's important, seems or feels secondary to the act of delivery. In a way, we are saying, I don't have time to improve how I think. And that cost doesn't show up on any dashboard, it doesn't show up on any sprint review. It compounds slowly in the quality of decisions I make, in the depth of trade-offs I make, in the things that we stop noticing. And that's an interesting shift to me as a person. So we saw this from the organizational perspective or a managerial perspective. Now it's a personal perspective. Let's muse about what does urgency do to us? What changes? When urgency becomes a very permanent condition, which is quite true because we are faced with numerous tasks, personal and professional, that we have to juggle around every day, time being constant, something shifts in the value in thinking. Like curiosity gives way to efficiency. We don't really pause and ask as many times, what if? But we are more asking, what, how fast? Exploration gives way to optimization. We probably don't wander as much towards insight. We are more often refining what we know. Presence gives way to projection. We stop being in the current, in the now, and start living, meaning anticipating the next deadline, the next release, the next target, living in the future, if you will. And what happens is, a thinking slowly degrades into a bit of a shallow thinking. It doesn't look careless. It just looks efficient because I don't have to get into the depth. I can skim through, I can go faster. And that's not questioned most of the time. The compression is very invisible, compression of time. Because it kind of wears a mask of competence. And that's what urgency does to our thinking. Now, what happens next? The tools. And today we have a lot of tools. Right? We have tools which help us do a job, tools which assist us in doing a job. And it's great. Tools are not bad. But we must also appreciate the fact that tools change our character too. And tools can be anything. It can be a checklist, it can be a framework, it can be a software tool, it can be an intelligent assistant type tool in whatever form. But what happens when we start using the tool? Frameworks seem like shortcuts. We reach for them, we skip the thinking, go ahead and write the code, use the framework. Checklists become shields. We just complete it, we tick it. Templates become, in some sense, substitutes for judgment, right? We fill them, move on. It's not that we're misusing them intentionally, but it just happens. And we compress them. And this pressure compresses them. The compressed tools produce more compressed thinking. So we're just getting faster and faster and faster, and slowly our fundamental character shifts and change. So the funny thing is, the tools which are supposed to allow me to expand my thought, because it will compress so that you can expand, has sometimes or probably is changing the way I think. So the tools designed to expand the thought used to finish the tasks. So we're just using the tools again to finish the tasks, not using it as, allowing me to expand. Because I'm not saying that, hey, certain job that I was doing the tools do, so let me now meander, let me now explore, let me now think, let me seek some insight. But that's a shift. So they become instruments of completion rather than instruments of depth, and we don't even notice this shift. So all these have probably an interesting bearing on the notion of excellence and sustained excellence, and that's what we're trying to contemplate and see thoughts which could probably become cognizant of. And therefore, what happens to intelligence under pressure? I'm sure all of you have heard about the Buddha story, which is used in various contexts. I am seeking inspiration from the same Buddha story of the half-filled teacup. What was the story all about? Here is Buddha. He had a guest, and he offered him tea, and then the guest said, "Look, I know a lot of stuff, but I am given to understand you can teach me a lot more. So I've come here to learn from you." It's an old Zen story, right? And Buddha smiled at him, and he offered him tea, and then said, "Okay, here is tea." And then he kept on pouring teas, and the tea kept on spilling outside. And the gentleman was flabbergasted, and he said, "What's happening? The tea is spilling. Why are you continuing to pour?" And this is a reflection of the story that when your mind is so full, where is the chance for you to absorb new? Full of urgency, full of the next deadline, full of ready what to expect to hear. And therefore, quite obviously, the interaction that I'm going to have is going to be shallow. The intelligence that I have is not the problem. The cup is the problem. It is full. And therefore, in some sense, sometimes we might probably use intelligence systems like AI systems to summarize, not to challenge, to confirm, may not be to explore. And that changes the equation, right? So we are not I'm so full, I will instruct it how to get things done. So even with intelligence systems, maybe there is still a feeling that I'm shallow, right? And that's what it is, and the world is shifting. But the interesting thing is, AI is no more just a tool. It is more like a partner which can expand my cognitive range. It can do extraordinary things. It can simulate a hypothesis. It can frame or suggest alternative ideas, framings. It can explore interesting edges of behavior which we can co-figure out. But all that is only possible if our posture is not rushed. But if our posture is rushed, and the intelligence therefore compresses the time, the thought doesn't deepen, and therefore we still end up not getting the benefit of some of these intelligence systems. The potential of being able to expand the cognitive range with some of the more modern tool sets or modern software stays untouched. Not because we lack sophistication, it's because we lack the space to do it, because we're focused on the time, not the space. And that is when intensity becomes a constant every day, the intelligence becomes, our intelligence or any intelligence becomes a servant to meet the urgency, right? Which is not supposed to be the case. Right? So even the most powerful tools, so to speak, become servants of urgency. We use them to go faster, not to go deeper. To close, not to open. To finish, not to understand. And that's probably interesting, isn't it? So, how tool changes character, what I could have done, may be interesting to ponder. And all these have a matter in the notion of sustained excellence, because sustained excellence is about continuous morphing, adjustment, change, improvement, learning, insight. And that requires space. That requires depth in everything that we do. Right? And insight need not come from only what I do. It can be observing completely different things, something adjacent to what we do. So let's look at what goals mean to us, what journey means to this, and what the notion of presence, which normally is disposed of today because we have always worried about the future. What do they mean to this idea of sustained excellence? And therefore, how do they help us build up a mechanics to sustain the excellence? Now here is a road, a beautiful road in a forest, tall trees, sunlit. I don't see an end. It's just a beautiful road. The shadows of, the trees lining it up, probably a great climate, and I enjoy the journey. I'm not so worried about where is the goal. I can't see the end because the road is meandering. And maybe that is where quality lives. Where I am going along the road, enjoying the present. It's not wrong to care about outcomes. It's not that we should not have a goal. I think without a direction, the effort will spill over everywhere. It will diffuse. If you don't have an intended outcome, we just meander wherever it matters. So delivery matters. That's not the point. But then, it's not just the end. We all know the journey is important. And the whole idea of showing this picture is one must feel the journey. The journey is a big and important instrument. And if the journey itself is not undervalued, then the moment of attention becomes very disposable. We don't get a deep insight. Right? Because we don't see it. We skip past it. The question nobody asked, or should have, they don't emerge from speed. They emerge from silence, slowness, being in the present, getting the full attention of now. And that is not laziness. That is not shying away from responsibilities. It is about being very mindful in some sense of the act of presence, right? And that's what we need to have, probably, what we need to become cognizant of, maybe, hopefully assisted by some tools which can do some of these things, right? And that's useful. So, we mused about various elements that probably hinder us, how they subtly change the way I think, change our character, in a way push me into the future. But what makes the sustained excellence possible? What can I do? Obviously, there isn't a formula because we know there exists one. Probably the more interesting and important thing, maybe, which I think probably is about the idea of rhythm. That it is a constant rhythm of ups, downs, highs, lows, silences, sounds, speed, slowness, shallow, deep, whatever you might call it. The oscillation, not a sprint in a direction. And the rhythm between the intensity and the restoration, the action and the reflection, the delivery and the recalibration, They're very structural in nature. They are not just ideas, right? Without this oscillation, like the heartbeat that you see, systems will destabilize. Cognitive bias increases. Emotional tolerance declines. Judgment narrows. Not just metaphorically, but very structurally. Like when we talk about exercise and building of body, so to speak, we know that we do intense exercise because we want to tear the muscles. And then you come back and have probably an additional protein, maybe like a protein shake, the muscle rebuilds, and that's how the muscles become stronger. So it is an alternate of tearing and rebuilding, recovery. So without that recovery cycle, our thinking also degrades, right? And that's what we're talking about. So recovery is not the opposite of excellence. Because it seems that's how some people and cultures sometimes think, right? Well, it's not that. It's not the opposite of excellence. It's a fundamental structural support. Otherwise, performance degrades and erosion in disguise really. So sustaining the excellence requires the idea of rhythm, not just a high-speed sprint. And it's a very structural support, right? And that's probably one interesting thing to keep in mind. So what does it mean to the company? What does it mean to me as an individual? For a company, a sustained excellence simply means a serious value, because the team produces amazing work, which translates to business benefits for the company and value to the customers at large. Right? So if that was not there, if that declined, what would happen? The team would probably mechanically do. They may not innovate. They may not come up with new ideas. They may not be, there might be things, the quality of decisions may trade off. The depth may be lesser. The ability to see interesting corners might dip. And that's not a people problem. It's not, you can't accuse that and say, hey, that guy is bad or that team is bad. It's a composition. It's a strategic loss. And if there are a few of the team members are actually amazing and brilliant, then they would be upset. They won't enjoy it anymore and they might quit. And the organizations may not notice it until it is becoming a little more. So there is a flip side to it, right? So is it value? Yes, of course it is value. So that constant notion of ability to reflect, silence, think through, exploit tools in a different manner are probably becoming more important. And what does it mean if I were a builder? Obviously it's deeper satisfaction. And that's what I mentioned. When that disappears, I become indifferent. I just do my job, I don't care. And obviously it affects the organization at large. So sustaining excellence is not some esoteric thing. It is a very fundamental thing to keep a system alive, to make every participant be a part of the system and therefore deliver greater value to the organization, to the customers and to the community at large. And what does it mean to the work? We are no more just ticking away. We're not just doing a bunch of tally marks. We're not just doing work and keeping ourselves busy. We are moving from an activity to an outcome, and here the outcome is a little more interesting, right? We are thinking about outcomes which are not just value in a typical sense, but value in a more higher order excellence. So when we have an intensity-driven culture where we have meetings, we have deadlines, we have deliverables, excellent. They are probably needed. Tickets are closed, sprints are completed, stories are delivered. All of them are measurable. They are all visible. They are all appreciated. But maybe potentially meaningless if excellence is not sustained. And therefore when we talk about sustained excellence, we are more like say, it's not about me did a lot. We're really moving to the idea we did what mattered. The shift is not asking what is the next thing. It is really about, is it the right thing? And therefore we are constantly cognizant about the space. And therefore we are worried about the fact that, hey, we are cognizant about the fact that space is not compromised because of intensity. And to the mind, what does it mean? To the work, it's a shift from we did a lot to what mattered. To the mind, it's a cerebral expansion. It's like this wonderful tree, expansive tree that grows across in the wide area. Right? That's what the picture seems to be. It's not effort anymore. It's a creative periphery, the ability to wander, to drift towards adjacent possibilities too. And when I say innovate, it need not just be about the product. It might be in the way we do, it might be the process they adopt, the way we use the tool, the way we ideate, the way we steer a conversation, the way we manage the team, the way we interpret data, many, many ways. Right? And that's what compression probably would kill, that idea of exploration. So there is obviously a value. So let's come back. You remember the teacup, right? The one which is overflowing. So sustained excellence keeps the cup half empty. We are cognizant about the cup. We are disengaging meaningfully. We are constantly checking that we are not unnecessarily full. We are not always overflowing with urgency, tasks and nesting. It is a deliberate attempt to try to keep it half empty. Carrying just enough to act, enough knowledge, enough skill, enough direction, enough space to receive. A space for intelligence, your own and the systems around you, to actually do what it is capable of. So that we deliver value to the company, so that as a builder I have enormous satisfaction, I do deliver meaningful outcomes, and I have a lot of creative intelligence, space. And once again, recovery is not the opposite of excellence. It is that which is required, and all of these converge. Carrying enough to act, enough space to receive. That's how you want to see the teacup. So where does this live? It lives in the central theme, which is fundamentally Smart QA to me, which is about how can I do less and accomplish more. When I say do less, it's not like I'm shying away. It's just that I'm trying to optimize constantly because I'm trying to make headroom to accomplish more. It's about probing, not just doing. It's about visualizing in the mind's eye, not just seeing superficially. It is about making sense of data, measures, observations, not just collecting to prove some point. It is expanding my thought, thinking in terms of systems and not just the parts. And this in a natural rhythm, a beautiful oscillation. And therefore, the idea of sustained excellence, a constant renewal, and therefore adding value to myself and to the organization and to the customers and community. So as we know, what do we leave behind in the entire thought? How do we conclude? Think about this. We have spent decades compressing time, becoming more efficient via processes, tools, techniques, aids, faster cycles, shorter sprints, quicker releases, optimized everything. So we have taken care of time. But what if the answer is not only about time? What if it was about space? Not more hours, not fewer tasks. It is space, the cognitive room to think more before acting, to probe before concluding, to hold a question long enough to teach you something. So compressing time, useful, it gave us speed. The creating space gives us the depth, which is what we have talked about. So maybe it is important for us to be cognizant about space. And therefore, let me leave you with this thought. If you had more cognitive space, how differently would you engage intelligence? It could be your own intelligence and the intelligence around you. Could be other people, could be other systems. Think about it.